All right, I have 1 o'clock, so I appreciate everybody joining me today. This is Ed Crow. Thanks for coming on. I definitely liked our topic for today, so I'm happy to see a lot of people come on. I think it's something that's very applicable that you can use. And my goal today is to talk about our T65 educational webinar strategy, educational seminar strategy, I should say. And really, this can be applied to any situation. So we do a lot of seminars. We have a lot of agents that do them in multiple states. I've been doing them for a while, so we've been able to take kind of best practices from that, and just to get a sample of the kind of things you can take with you if you're going to run a seminar. So what we're going to do today, and this webinar is going to be longer than normal. We usually run 15 to 20 minutes. This one will go over that. We do record all of our webinars, so everyone will get the recording. Everybody who registered, even if you didn't attend, you will get the recording sent to you. And you can also look at all our webinar recordings on YouTube. So if you just Google YouTube Crow and Associates, you'll see all our webinars. And we'll send you the link to them when we send out the recording to everybody who registered. A couple quick things before we start. If you have any questions, just send them into the webinar. I'm going to try to answer them for you at the end. I will answer them, but hopefully correctly or be able to answer them. But just send the questions in as we go along here. I'll answer them at the end for you. As I said, we got a bunch of new people coming on right now. So we do record these. You will get the recording, future reference. If you want to watch one of our webinars but can't make the time, just simply register, and then you'll get the recording if you register, even if you don't attend. I'm going to talk a little faster than normal today because this webinar is a little long in the tooth. So just want to kind of get us through it, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you. So we're going to talk about T65 educational seminar strategies. Talk about attendance, location, meals, presentation, other best practices, and I will then do a quick example of a presentation. I'll run through it and just, I'm not going to do the whole thing. It would take too long, but I will give you a general idea of how to do it. I did these presentations for years. I've watched a lot of agents do the presentation, so give you a quick run through. So here we go. And new people coming on, if you have any questions, just send them into the webinar, and I'm going to answer them at the end. Okay, so the hardest part of a webinar or seminar, I keep saying webinar, hardest part of a seminar of any type is the attendance. It's the biggest issue. I mean, if you don't get good attendance, seminars take some time to set up. You've got to find a venue. You spend a lot of time preparing, and then if you don't have anybody there, it's really a waste of your time. So that always is the issue, is getting people there. We use a company for this that our agents have access to. They drive attendance for the agent. The agent really doesn't have to do anything when it comes to the attendance. But you can use any method you want. You don't have to use ours. You can use any method you want, as long as whatever method you're using puts people in the seats. That's important. So, you can use our company, for example. They do charge, but we'll talk about how you can offset that charge and that kind of thing. And, for the amount of people you get, it works really well. You can partner with organizations that will help send their members to your seminar. That usually is a good way to do it. Carriers will advertise for agents. Pretty much all of them do that. For seminars, they tend to only do that during AEP, though, versus like our seminar program with our company. You can do seminars year-round, T65s, which is nice. But carriers have been very good about partnering with agents they'll pay for all the advertising. You got to plan that well ahead with the broker manager. You'll hear me saying that like a broken record on all my webinars. Relationships with the broker managers, agent managers for the companies are incredibly important. So you really got to push to have a relationship there with all the different carriers you work with the agent manager. But they can set you up. A lot of these companies can set you up to do seminars for them for AEP, and they'll pay for them. Seminar I'm talking about today is a little different because it's a T65 educational, but same concepts apply. When we use our company to drive attendance, we're averaging about 65 T65s attending your seminar. So you have about 65 prospects at your seminar. The company we use does all the work. All you really have to do as the agent is find the location. We'll talk about that more, but you find the location and then just be ready to do the presentation. And we'll talk about all the things that kind of go along with that. So when you're doing a T65 educational seminar, you're doing it educational, so you can serve a meal. That rule was changed in 2020. If you're doing an educational event, a meal can be served. There is a $15 max per person on the meal, which can be tricky. However, we've done hundreds of seminars, especially recently. We've done a lot of them, and agents are always able to, one way or the other, they have to look sometimes, but they can find somewhere that will get them to that $15 number. The best places to do a T65 educational seminar are pizza places, diners, lower cost restaurants, Texas Roadhouse, Cracker Barrel, Golden Corral if you're down south, because they have pricing that works. People tend to think these need to be fancy locations with fancy meals. They don't. If you're doing an annuity seminar, that's an emotional buy, an emotional sale. You do have to kind of fancy those up and do expensive meals to get people to attend annuity seminars, not for Medicare. They're coming, they want the information. The meal is just something to help get them there. And usually, doing a meal does help with attendance a lot. We've done these without a meal, and attendance is about half of that 65 that we're getting for our seminars we're doing now. I usually don't recommend country clubs, private clubs, or event venues. They just don't pull as well. Usually the places I mentioned above do better. And just one thing I'll mention, I'll probably mention it again. However you do this, when you're doing your presentation, make sure you're not presenting when the food is being brought out. It's loud, it's disruptive. So you can either have like bread and water or salad and water, do the presentation, and when you're done, have the food come out. Or you can do the presentation for a while, and then when the food's ready, take a break. Say, okay, the food's coming out. Take a 10-minute break while the food comes out, and then proceed once they have their food. But I don't recommend doing it while the food's coming out. It's disruptive. We've tried. And again, I see there's questions coming in. I certainly will answer these at the end. Okay, so this is an educational seminar, so the presentation cannot be carrier specific. You can't have you can have a carrier's name on there, but you can't have plan-specific information. It's educational. That's why you can serve a meal, because you're doing it on an educational basis. Usually what we do, and I'll show you an example, is the people are there to understand the basics. They're turning 65. On our seminars that we're using our company with, everybody there is basically turning 65. You're going to go over Medicare basics about A and B, how you enroll in A and B. People don't know that. We take it for granted. So you explain that. And then you explain the difference between an Advantage plan and a supplement. I'm not going to hit a lot of that here because we'll go over the example in a few minutes. Presentation should be under 50 minutes. So just hear me out on that one. If you go longer than 50 minutes on the presentation, you're going to start to lose people. We as agents tend to think we have to have a lot of information, but it tends to be overwhelming for the audience. So keep it simple and keep it under 50 minutes. If you need a presentation, we have sample presentations for agents that work with us. We give them out all the time. And then we have a graphics department that can take, for example, the Ed Crow presentation. You can look at it, tweak it, and then they can tailor it to you, your logo, your website, your information, your colors. They can make it look like your presentation. I have no problem with people copying mine. In the presentation, you're going to explain how you work and get paid. Another thing that for example, take for granted is we assume these people, when they come into the presentation, they understand how we get paid. What you'll find is if you don't say something, you'll get a handful of people there that will think you're going to try to bill them if they work with you. So explain how you get paid. I'll go through that in the example presentation in a minute. Keep it as simple as humanly possible. You'll see my presentation is very simple. And it's a presentation I've tweaked over the years just based on the feedback I get doing it. Avoid using too much information. People want to say, well, at the presentation, I'm really going to get into the donut hole. I wouldn't suggest it. It's too much. I'll show you what I would suggest. But anyway, it's easy to do too much and overwhelm people. Just happens. It's our nature. We know Medicare, they don't, and we think we got to give them more than we do. Build a pitch in during your presentation at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end, explaining how you can help people and why they should work with you. That's really important, and it's not done enough. Agents will do a presentation. It'll be a great one. It'll give them tons of information, but they're failing to build in there. We're salespeople. But they're failing to build in the fact of how they can help the clients and prospects and why it's to their benefit to work with you, because that's what this is really all about. Follow-up is incredibly important with any seminar you do. And I think that's where all of us as agents fail the most, is we don't do great follow-up. We'll do a killer presentation. We'll have 60, 70 people over 2 nights at our presentation, and it's done, and we kind of put it out of sight, out of mind. Follow-up is critical, and it's got to be done. And when it isn't, that's where you don't get the results you want. That's the difference between you do a seminar on 2 nights, you get 65, 70 people. That's the difference between enrolling ultimately 10 of them and enrolling 25 of them is the follow-up, or maybe more. With our company, for example, that does the registrations, you get full registration information. So I certainly suggest people who have registered for your 2 meetings, call them the day before, remind them about the meeting, see if there's any dietary restrictions, make sure they know how to get there, that kind of thing. And the ones who don't come to your first, who registered for your first presentation but don't come, build a day in between your presentations so you can call the ones that didn't show up and say, hey, I noticed you didn't make it. We have another one tomorrow. Would you like to attend that one? That's why you'll see when I go through this, I recommend having your presentations on Tuesday and Thursday, so you have a day in between them so you can call the people that didn't come. And lastly, you are legally allowed to call everyone that registers. So you might get some people ultimately, most agents do, if they call them, they'll get people who didn't come at all, and they'll still wind up writing. So now I'm going to do an example of the presentation. And again, I'm trying to be mindful of the time this is going to run over. Okay, so we have this in a presentation format. Here's the information that we go over on the presentation. We have different agents that might add a little something different or tweak it. But in general, most people have the same template. This is the one I used. I'm biased, but I liked it a lot. And I would start off with the presentation by talking to them about working with an independent agent. I would explain that I had access to a number of carriers. And again, I'm going to summarize and go through this much quicker than I would at the actual presentation. When you're with clients, I go into detail. Again, this presentation takes me about 50 minutes, but you don't want to go over that. But anyway, I'll explain to them that we work with a number of carriers, that the insurance companies pay us, they don't pay us, the rate that they pay for maybe a supplement, 0 premium on an Advantage, but the rate that they pay is the same with or without us. So working with us does not change it. And I usually use the example of we're kind of like working with an auto and home agent, if they've ever worked with them, and most people have, where rate's the same with or without them, but they simply shop and try to find you the best deal, the best benefit for what you're paying. Or if it's an Advantage plan, the best Advantage plan that fits them, fits their criteria. So I'll explain to them, we'll find the best plan type that you need, whether it be Advantage or supplement, and then when we figure that out, then we'll find the company that fits best. Lastly, I'll mention that we will always call them, which we do. We will call them, and I think any agent should. We'll call them during AEP or prior to AEP just to see if they want to review options, maybe give them an update on their plan. If there are any negative changes, in today's day and age, the changes are mostly positive these days on renewals, but make them aware of that and then see if they want to review. Kind of a separate pitch here, but that's also why I think it's important to use like a Connecture, a Sunfire, or a Medicare bot, because you have them saved in your system. They're in there. You have their drug plan saved, or their drug list saved, their doctor list saved. It makes it a lot easier when you call during AEP for those who want to review to rerun their drugs, for example, because it's already in there. You can edit the list if something changed, but you can run it quickly. But anyway, let them know that you will call them. You're going to be there for them, and you'll call them prior to AEP to review their options. Then in the presentation, I go into when should I enroll in Medicare A and B. So I'm talking to the audience now, and I'm just going to lay it out for them because most people who come to a T65 seminar don't understand this. So I'll just explain. Sounds basic, but they don't know this stuff. You're turning 65, going to be eligible for Medicare the first of the month you turn 65. You can enroll up to 3 months after you turn 65. However, you probably should think about that. It's best if you need to enroll the 3 months prior to turning 65, because if you enroll the month of 65 or the 3 months later, you're going to have a delay in when your B is effective. So usually try to encourage them to enroll in A and B the 3 months prior to the month they turn 65. I always also mention, because I get burned on this once in a blue moon, or I used to, If their birthday falls on the first of the month, their effective date is not that month. It's going to be the first of the previous month. So not everybody knows that. They certainly won't. And once in a while, you'll get somebody with their birthday on the first. I'll talk about auto enrollment. How if they're receiving Social Security payments, they get auto enrolled. I'll go over the Part B premium, explain to them if you're drawing Social Security, you're going to be auto enrolled, and they're going to just suck that premium right out of your Social Security check. Again, they don't know these things, so I explain it to them. Talk about manual enrollment. So somebody's turning 65, they're not drawing Social Security, they will not automatically be enrolled in A and B. I explain that. Tell them that the easiest way to do that is to enroll online, and I will email them that link. Or if their Social Security office is open, which most of them are these days now after COVID, they can call or visit their Social Security office if they're open. I explain if they're not drawing Social Security, their Part B premium will be billed quarterly. If somebody's turning 65 and maybe they're late doing it or they're kind of doing it last minute, a lot of times they'll be waiting for their Medicare ID so you can enroll them. And one thing you can tell them, a tip, is if they log into their My Social Security account, they don't have to be drawing Social Security, but if they log into it, they have access to it. If they log into it, that's the first place their Medicare ID will show up, and it will show up much quicker than they get it in the mail. So if you got to write somebody but you don't have their Medicare ID yet, have them register for their My Social Security account, and they can get their Medicare ID will show up much quicker there than they'll get it in the mail. I go over a section of Medicare when working, because remember, we're doing T65 seminars. And by the way, I forgot to mention, I would suggest doing these seminars on Tuesday and Thursday, and you do them at 6 o'clock. I get a lot of agents that do them during the day. Well, remember, most of these people are working. A lot of people now, when they turn 65, are still working. So you want to do your seminars at 6 o'clock, maybe even a little later, like 6:30. But I recommend a Tuesday and a Thursday for the reasons I mentioned earlier. That way, somebody misses Tuesday, you've got a day to call them and invite them for Thursday, and you do them at 6 so they're done with work. So I'll explain, since I have a lot of people that are working usually, how it works. If you have a valid waiver, you're actively working, getting coverage through work, and your group is 20 or more employees, you can waive Part B if you'd like. And I just explain that to them and how it works. I explain that they got to be meeting both requirements to waive B: actively working, getting coverage through work or through a spouse's work. Mentioned the group of 20. That didn't used to be an issue. It's always been a rule. But we used to say back in the day, if somebody was actively working, getting coverage through work, and their group was 8 people, we said, no problem, you can waive Part B. They really can't now. They'll get burned on that most likely. So if they're a group of less than 20, even if they're actively working, getting coverage through work, they should enroll in Part B. The carriers are starting to, because Medicare is primary when the group's less than 20, and the carriers are starting to deny those claims when they get somebody on a group of 10 who's 67 years old, they never got Part B. So Medicare's primary, the carrier used to just pay those claims, but they aren't. A lot of them are not anymore. They're coming back saying, we're not covering 80% of this because you're supposed to have Medicare. So I explained that to them. Also explained that COBRA, this is a big one, that COBRA and VA are not a valid waiver for Part B. People think that they are not. COBRA and VA are a waiver for D, not B though. So that's important. Then I have a section where I go over, I call it negative stuff. You can call it whatever you want. Again, we can give you a presentation. You can tweak it, whatever you want on it, and then we can tailor it towards you to make it look like your own. So I'll talk about negative stuff. So the Part B penalty, go over that. Without a valid waiver, the penalty is 10% of the Part B premium per year. It's actually more specifically, it's for every 12-month period, 10% penalty. I'll go over IRMA. I think that's important. IRMA is something that I think we forget sometimes and don't remember. There's IRMA for B and D. So you got to remind them that they're going to, if their income's over the allowable threshold based on their income 2 years ago, they're going to pay an IRMA on B and D. Easy to forget the D part. Married couples, the income's combined. And if a couple was making $400,000  2 years ago, and now they only make $100,000, they can appeal that because they have a life-changing event, which is loss of reduction in work hours, retiring, life-changing event, so they can appeal that IRMA right away. They don't have to wait for it to catch up in 2 years. Again, I see we have questions coming in. I will gladly answer those at the end for you. I'll go over the Part D penalty. And again, I go into more detail in the presentation, but here I just want to show the example and kind of take you through it quickly, being mindful of your time. Go over the Part D penalty. Need to have D coverage when first eligible. COBRA is a waiver for D. It's not a waiver for B, but it's a waiver for D. They can have any other credible coverage to waive their D. If they didn't have D when they were supposed to, when they do finally get it, they'll pay a 1% penalty based on the national benchmark premium. And they'll pay that penalty when they enroll in a D plan. So, I usually tell them it's about 38 cents per month, or 40, it depends, but that's right around what it is on the penalty, right around 38 to 40 cents for every month they didn't have a D plan that they'll pay for as long as they're enrolled in a Part D plan, whether it's standalone or through an Advantage. So I'll go over that, give them kind of an idea of what they should do, the rules for Medicare A and B. Then I'll talk about the basics. And I don't get super detailed in this, but I'll explain Part A. I'll explain how it works, what it covers, and I'll mention the important things like the deductible. So if you go to the hospital, you're going to have a $1,556 deductible. That's per 60-day admission. I'll go over that with them. I will talk to them as well about Part B. And again, I'll go into a little more detail than this, but I'll just explain what B covers: physician services, outpatient hospital, DME. And I basically will summarize it by saying B covers the things that you do outside of the hospital, medical care outside of the hospital. I'll talk about the B premium, standard B premium. If you don't have an IRMA, it's $170.10. Talk about the deductible, $233, one time per year deductible, and then 20% coinsurance on B once that deductible's met. So I try to give them an understanding of the rules, what they have to do to get A and B in the first place. Try to explain to them what A and B kind of generally covers. I'll explain to them that it doesn't cover medications with the exception of Part B drugs, of course, which it does. So then I'll say to them, okay, so that's what A and B covers. So what we got to figure out today is how are you going to cover the 20% not covered by Part B? How are you going to cover some or all of the Part A deductible? And how are you going to get drug coverage? That's the issue. So I'm laying it out so I can kind of present it like that, where those are the gaps, and we got to figure out what they're going to do with that. And I go over the two basic options. I do them in this order on purpose because it's easier mentally for them to follow through and follow along. Option one is Medicare stays primary. I'll explain what that means to a certain degree. Your Medicare is an insurance card. You use that when you go to the doctor, the hospital, the lab. So they can leave the Medicare primary and they can buy a supplement. And I will talk a bit about the supplement. I'll give an example, usually Plan G or Plan N. Give them an idea. Then you buy a standalone drug plan. So that's option one, Medicare's primary. You then buy a supplement to pick up what's left over, the hospital deductible, the Part B coinsurance, and then you buy a standalone drug plan. That's the first option. Then I'll explain option two, and that's the plan they pitch on TV. So forget about option one. You can go with option two if you want, and that is a plan that replaces your Medicare. So you're still in the Medicare program, but you are not using your Medicare card as your insurance. You're using an Advantage plan instead. And a lot of times make the comparison to a group health plan or individual health plan. A lot of these people are on a work plan or they're on a standalone individual plan, and I'll explain to them it works similar to that. Copays, network, preventative benefits, extra benefits maybe if they have it on their work plan. It gives them some perspective and helps them kind of understand how an Advantage plan works. And then I'll say, let's look at the setup. And I'll show them an example of a Medicare card, and I'll kind of reiterate what we talked about. Original Medicare, here it is. That card can be used as insurance. And just remember the gaps, the hospital deductible, the Part B deductible and coinsurance. There's no drug coverage. And then I'll show them a slide of the options. And again, I'll reiterate it. Option one, you leave your Medicare primary. You buy a supplement to pick up what's left over. You don't have to do any administrative work. It's all automated. Go to the doctor, the hospital, the lab, give them your Medicare card. You can go to anywhere that accepts Medicare. What's left over then is automatically routed to your supplement. Depending on the supplement you pick, they pay for that, whatever they're going to cover. as long as it's approved by Medicare, and then you buy a D plan. And then again, I'll go over option 2, which forget about everything I just said. Option 2 replaces your Medicare A and B. You still got to pay for Part B, but an Advantage plan will replace it, and it combines medical, drug, and extra benefits, but you will have co-pays in a network. And I try to be very honest with them about the good and bad, because ultimately, when they do this, I want them to, in their head, kind of think which one of these probably fits better for me. And then I'll go over the positives and negatives of both. I summarize it. And I won't do it all for you here today because you can read it, but I will for them. Medicare is primary, so if that provider accepts Medicare, you can go anywhere you want. It does not matter who your supplement is. They accept Medicare. It could be Ed Crow's supplement, and I'll say that. If I had my own supplement, as long as that doctor or hospital takes Medicare, you're good. It doesn't matter who the supplement is at all. There is no network. With a supplement, we can determine the exact amount of coverage you want. So there are no co-pays. We can basically, if we want, we can give you a covered in full plan with the exception of the Part B deductible. I'll explain that. Explain that plans are standardized. With the exception of 3 states, a Plan G is a Plan G. It doesn't matter the company offering it. Benefits are identical. I'll mention how supplements, because you're on original Medicare, there's very little managed care, and there's a lot less prior authorization. So you need an MRI. There's no prior auth required. You just go get one. And then I'll explain that you can match up the drug plan. So the disadvantage of the drug plan is the premium, but what's nice is you can match that drug plan up specific to their drugs. The drug plan doesn't have to be the same company as your supplement. And I mention that because a lot of times they don't know that. Then we'll hit the negatives. You pay 3 premiums with a supplement. Let's talk about that. There's no dental, no vision, or extra benefits other than maybe silver sneakers. I talk about that. And also that you can have issues with your annual physical depending on the doctor you use. And what I'm referring to there with them is that if a doctor's office is savvy, they will get an annual physical under original Medicare, which covers very little. It's just a wellness visit, making sure you're alive. Under original Medicare and a supplement, remember, if original Medicare doesn't approve, the supplement won't cover either. So if somebody gets a full physical at a doctor's office on original Medicare, and the doctor tries to do tons of tests and various things you do with a physical, and they call it a physical, well, Medicare is not going to cover most of the tests, and the supplement won't either because it's not Medicare approved. A smart doctor, savvy doctor, I should say, bills it as diagnostic. That way it's medical and it is covered. It's not preventative. But once in a while, you'll get a doctor's office that plays it, right by the rules. They'll want to run a bunch of tests and stuff, and they'll put it in. The claim is preventative, and it's going to get denied. So that happens once in a while on a supplement. Then I'll go pros and cons of supplement, then I'll talk about the Advantage plan. Positives, you only pay your Part B premium. Most of the plans in the area have 0 premium if you're in an area with good 0 premium plans. Part D drug is included, and I do mention that Part D plan's just as good, sometimes better, than the standalone D plans. But you can't switch them. Whatever drug plan comes with that Advantage plan, that's the plan. That's the drug plan. And a full annual physical is covered. And of course, the flavor of the day is to talk about extra benefits, dental, vision, OTC, transportation, that kind of thing, depending on where you are and what kind of plans you're looking at. I will be honest with them and mention the negatives. I want them to have a full picture here. So, Advantage plans have networks. Yeah, you can have a PPO, but you don't really want to be seeing a doctor on an out-of-network basis. Talk about the plan copays. They can add up. If you have a bad year, you could pay a lot of copays until you hit your out-of-pocket max. Mention the managed care and prior auth part of it. Might wait a little bit to get an MRI. There's a much bigger managed care element. If you're in a skilled nursing facility, if you're not showing improvement within 3 to 5 days, you're out of there. Medicare will do the same. Original Medicare, by the way, they are kind of cranking down on that, but you definitely have longer to not show improvement and stay in the skilled facility longer on original Medicare than you do an Advantage plan. And the drug plan is usually solid, but it can't be adjusted. Unless you switch them and show them a different Advantage plan, the drug plan is the drug plan. Then I'll wrap it up for them and say, so are you in option 1 or option 2? Well, it depends on your personal situation and preferences. And I'll just give them some examples. I won't read them all here. You can see them. I'll use the example of you're using tons of medical care. You go to the doctor 3 times a month and you're hospitalized 5 times last year. Option one, you have a number of doctors in different states. Might be hard to match up on an Advantage plan. Option one. Maybe you have a huge importance on dental, vision, and extra benefits, and you're relatively healthy. Option two. It just depends on their situation, and I try to give them examples. I think examples help a lot to help information resonate with people and help them understand. And then also you need to consider the state you're in. If you're in a guaranteed issue state, which there's 4 of them, New York, Connecticut, Mass, and Maine, you might be more, have a bigger tendency to put them in an Advantage plan to start, because any time in a guaranteed issue state, AEP comes around, regardless of their health, they can move to a supplement anytime during their life during AEP. Versus an underwritten state, after a year or 2, depending on the state, they lose that ability to use a trial right and move. So they could get blocked if they become unhealthy. Or I guess if you're in a birthday rule state, that's one, like Oregon, for example, you could, rely on that. But state you're in makes a difference. Okay, then a lot of confusion with them about, AEP. I'm turning 65, so I can't enroll until AEP. They don't understand the basics a lot. So I'll go through AEP and say how, if you're turning 65, that's not applicable for you until you're enrolled and the first AEP for you comes up. AEP, I'll explain OEP. I'll talk to them about the 2 trial rights, because those trial rights can be important, especially if you're in a non-guaranteed issue state. And obviously there's 2 trial rights, and they're both applicable, and they work in any state, even non-guaranteed issue states. So I'll go over those as well. Talk about SEPs. I'll give them some examples of those, moving out of state, getting drug help, a loss of employment coverage, SEP, for both getting Part B of Medicare if you lose employer coverage, or getting an Advantage plan. One thing I always screwed up, and it's good to remember, is keep in mind, if somebody's a late, delayed Part B enrollment because of loss of employer coverage, you have 60 days to get Part B, but we tend to think you have 60 days to enroll in an Advantage plan. You don't. You've got to put that application in prior to the B effective date. So it's something to keep in mind. I always talk to them about annual follow-up. So I let them know. Every year we're going to call you to see if there's other options you want to look at. Maybe there's new plans out. Maybe your current plan had changes. Maybe you just want to stay exactly where you are. That's great. We'll just check you off the list and say you're good. Talk to you next year. Maybe you want to change from Advantage to supplement or vice versa. Well, we talk to them about that, let them know we'll be calling them. And then lastly is we talk about next steps. So next steps are, let's set up a meeting or call. Let's review your specific situation. Find out what you like better. What do you think's better, supplement or Advantage? Whichever it is, we'll talk about it. We'll figure out the right plan. We'll find the right company once we figure out that plan. I always say to them, provide a list of your medications, whether you're going Advantage or supplement and drug plan. That's going to be important, so we can check to find the best plan for you. We've got a program we can run it in to check your drugs, see what plan comes out the best. If you're interested in Advantage plans, we need a list of your doctors. And then what we do is from there, we have that conversation. We answer questions for them. And I usually say to have help, especially like the program we do where you're getting 65, 70 people. Help is important because, people will ask a lot of questions, or somebody might be dominating your time at the end of the seminar. And if you got somebody else there to help you to field questions or just to kind of route people around, that helps. So usually I'd recommend 2 people for this. And then lastly, and I mentioned it before, follow-up is incredibly important. I mean, a lot of these people will be turning 65 in 4 months, 5 months. You need to stay engaged. You need to follow up. When you use our program, you have a registration list of everybody with all their contact information. You need to stay in touch. That's the difference. Bad follow-up, you might enroll 8 people ultimately. Agents that do really good follow-up and get good attendance like we usually do, they can enroll 20, 25, 30 people in some cases and get referrals off of them. So it makes a huge, huge difference doing consistent and organized follow-up. All right, so that's that. Let's see if we have any questions. Somebody said I saw a O65 instead of T65. What market is that related to? Not sure. If you want to call me, I'm not really following your question. T65 is just the turning 65 seminar. O65 could be maybe 65 65 plus, 66 plus seminar. I'm not sure on that. I don't think I really understand the question. So if you want to give me a call or email me, I'd be happy to answer that for you. Does a seminar vendor look at seminar saturation in a given area? Yes, they do. If they've run a lot of seminars in a given area, they'll let you know, and they'll say maybe we want to do a different venue or check a different place. Hello, do we get a copy of the deck? Yes, we're going to send you the recorded webinar, so we send the recording out. Agents that work with us will certainly send you the whole deck. I can send you the presentations as well for those who have contracts with us. But everybody on this, whether you're with us or not, everybody will get a recorded link for this webinar. Let's see. Do you have any agencies who live and work in a very saturated market who travel a distance for better areas? Yes. I mean, I think you're looking at a prime example. Connecticut's a pretty saturated market. But usually there's still enough business. So I don't get, traveling to a distance is hard. If you're going to another state, it's difficult because, you're away from your office, away from your home. It's, when you do these seminars, you're going to need to do follow-up meetings with these people. So it's hard if you do it far away unless you plan on, you have another home or you spend a lot of time in that area anyway. It's kind of difficult. But I would say, honestly, there's, saturated areas we have people that produce just as much, if not more, in saturated areas as non. So I think you got to be careful when you're doing this far away because it might turn into a big hassle for you. Okay, please explain the group plan waiver that is needed for employers with, see if I can see with 20 or more employees. Sure. So if you're getting coverage through, you're actively working, getting coverage through work, and your employer is 20 or more, you have a waiver, a valid waiver. You don't have to enroll in Part D, or in Part B rather, until such time as you're no longer working or no longer getting coverage through work. It's a valid waiver for B. But you've got to be working, getting coverage through your work, or you can get coverage through, getting coverage through a working spouse, but the person's got to be working and getting coverage through that employer. Coverage through somewhere else doesn't count. So working, coverage through that employer, in a group of 20 or more, you can waive Part B without penalty. Ed, can you create a seminar scope to briefly touch on other supplemental options such as cancer coverage, etc.? Yes, you can. So at the seminar, if you're at the seminar, you certainly can do a permission to contact. You could do a scope, and you could check off doing other products, health-related products, which that way you can, if you have an appointment with that person and it's health-related product, you can knock it out right during that appointment if you want. Of course, you can't do like life sales at that same appointment or annuities or things like that. Are you allowed to encourage setting appointments up on the spot? Yes, you certainly can. You can hand out your card, encourage appointments on the spot. The rules changed a couple years ago for educational seminars. I've seen where some drugs won't be covered, but let me see if I can get the full question. I can see where some drugs won't be covered, but would be under Part B. Yes, that's true. So some drugs are Part B drugs. The rule for that is if it's a medication that you are not picking up yourself at the pharmacy, if you're going to the provider's office or going to a hospital and they have the medication there and they are putting that medication in your body, it's going to fall under Part B in most cases. Let's see. Somebody else said, for Zoom educational meetings, is this one or other educational presentations? It's the same. I used to do this presentation for in-person and for Zoom. Here's the trade-off with that. Zoom meetings, I would get less people, and my conversion rate would be much lower. However, I'm not traveling and blowing up an evening, going to a location. Yeah, obviously, the money spend is much lower. So Zoom, much lower conversion, but a lot less time and expense. I kind of liked the face-to-face because I felt like I had more control, but I certainly did Zooms, and I know a lot of agents that still do them. Let's see. Other IMOs, FMOs are barraging agents with emails about opportunities to work the ACA market. Yeah, working the ACA market is a good opportunity. It is a good way to generate Medicare sales. You get a lot of leads. You get a lot of people that you might do ACA work for, and they're going to turn 65 now or maybe 2-3 years down the road. So it is a good way to generate Medicare business. The problem is, working ACA takes patience. There is oftentimes a screw up or a lot of communication problems on various fronts, but between the governing body, the state, and the carrier and a subsidy. And if that gets screwed up, it can be tedious and time consuming. So I know some agents who don't bother with ACA because they know the time that can be involved when things go wrong. I have others that fully embrace it, do tons of ACA business because they do ultimately get to write a lot of Medicare from that ACA business. Let's see. Medicare is now allowing a marketing presentation after a break following educational seminar. Thoughts? Yes, they do. I do have some people that do that, but usually, it's a good question though, but usually they will do the educational event and then do follow-ups. Maybe it's a meeting right after the educational event with people, or they'll usually do follow-up and set appointments. Because you get a lot of these people, especially at the T65 educational, they're not going to be 65 sometimes. Some of them are, within 3 months, but a lot of them will be 4 or 5 months out. And obviously, T65 seminars are very popular with RIAs, IARs, financial planners, and annuity people because you're doing the Medicare, but these people, a lot of them are retiring, so it's a perfect cross-sell and lead for other types of business down the road. All right, so let's see. Question on still working. What if on disability and still covered by employer insurance? I see. So I think you're asking if you're Medicare under 65, Medicare eligible because of disability, but still covered by employer insurance, then yes, you can waive Part B as long as they meet all the other criteria. Somebody said, would you bring up GLIC at every single seminar as well? You certainly could. That's GLIC-RX that's being referred to there. GLIC is never going to make you a lot of money, but it does provide a valuable service to your client. So GLIC has good discounts, very similar to GoodRx. People are saying on this call, well, why wouldn't you use GoodRx? Well, keep in mind, GoHealth did a deal with GoodRx. So when your clients use GoodRx, they are giving GoHealth permission to call, and GoHealth will call them and will try to move them. They have marks. They can see what they have, and they'll try to move them to a different plan. So when you send clients to GoodRx, you are endangering your client. You're putting yourself at risk to lose that client. So GLIC will do similar discounts to GoodRx. I find they're as good, if not better, in some areas, and they don't sell the information. So you can send people to GLIC, get them the discount. You'll get paid a little bit for it, but you're protecting your client from getting phone calls. Okay, let's see. Approximate cost for seminars. Sure, that's a great question. So it runs, to get that 65 to 70 people, the company we use, they will run you about $2,400 cost. Crow will pay half of that for your first seminar, so we'll split that with you. We'll pay for that. We will have other pools of money that can help with costs as well, especially leading up to AEP, or even during lock-in. We've been using national pools of money to help offset costs. But we'll split the cost on you for the first one, the $2,400. You still got the meals to pay for, but the carriers love these programs, and the broker managers are more than willing, with almost every company, to help out with the meal costs. So you can keep your costs pretty reasonable. And I have agents that run these seminars every month. I have an agency that does 4 of them a month, and they get help with it. So yeah, so around $2,400 plus the cost of meals, but certainly you won't be out of pocket that much. And an agent that does this well, does a good presentation, does good follow-up, you're looking at 15 to 25 enrollments. Can Crow help an agent who wants to dive into ACA? To a degree. We don't broker ACA. We have certainly a ton of agents that do it, but they don't do it through us. They're doing it direct usually. We do have a couple partner agencies that have ACA capability to set agents up. So if you're really interested, I can definitely refer you to one of them, and they'll help you on the ACA side. But usually agents will go direct on ACA. Great question. I think that's all we got. Really good questions. I appreciate all of them. I hope this was helpful today. And I know the webinar went much longer than normal, but hope it was helpful, and appreciate you coming on today. We will send out this recording. We will send you out the link to our YouTube page so you can see all our recordings that way. and hope to hear from you. If you have any questions, give us a call, and hope to see you on a future webinar. We have one tomorrow as well, by the way. So thanks for coming on, and have a great day.